Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Luminosity Makes Moves Miami 2024, which is going to be taking place this weekend, coming in at, I believe, an S tier with pretty much all of NA's top talent plus miya showing up. And for our top 16 seeds, you're going to have Riddles, Wrath, Beast Mode Paul, and Mudace in 13th, Meister, Mars, Cola, and Syrup in 9th. In 7th place, you're going to have Zombalima. 5th place is Shattuck Leo. 4th place is Tweak. 3rd place is Light. 2nd place is Sonics, and projected to win the entire thing is miya. And I should also note that Rivals 2 is going to be taking place this weekend as well. I'm not going to be doing a prediction for it just because I honestly have no idea how this is going to unfold, but I will be doing a recap just for anyone that's interested. So we're going to be staying within this top 64 area, but there are some pretty competitive matches in the pools phase. So if there's any of those that you're curious about, just leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to tell you about them. But starting off with miya versus Chunky Kong as our first set, and miya is going to be the heavy favorite for this one. I'd say the big boon for CK in this matchup is going to be the fact that Game & Watch is just an extremely light character, and especially with the way that Chunky Kong hits, you're really only going to need 1 or 2 conversions before you start looking for that stock. But I don't know how DK is supposed to deal with Game & Watch Nair in neutral, or Game & Watch up air in disadvantage, or Game & Watch back air in the recovery. And honestly, I think the answer to all 3 of those questions is just, he doesn't. He just ends up losing, and I think that is what is going to happen here. Chunky Kong most likely going to lose that set. But if it was any other DK in the world, they would have been completely counted out at this point. I do think that Chunky Kong can do it, but man, is it a tough matchup. Then you're going to have Wrath versus Peepna, and I think this one is actually an even matchup, because while you do have Sonic being able to break into Mega Man's zone and being super smothering once he gets into that zone, you also have a bunch of disruptive tools from Mega Man that kind of stop Sonic in his track, quite literally, with the Metal Blade, with the Pellet. You've got some nice disjoints on a move like forward air as well. So both Sonic and Mega Man have ways to kind of interrupt that basic game plan, and just going off recent form, I am going to be giving this one to Peepna, but to Wrath's credit, we haven't really seen a ton of him recently, so he could be absolutely cooking and just hasn't been playing. But regardless, I'm going to give this one to Peepnut. Then you're going to get miya versus Peepnut, and I do think that you have Mega Man slightly winning out versus Game Watch. If I had to give that matchup to either character, I personally think it's more of an even matchup. And you do have Peepnut winning their last encounter now. That was quite some time ago, and I am going to be giving this one to miya just because he's honestly been looking amazing. Invitational, he gets that massive win over Spargo. He obviously wins Cirque as well as winning Delta. I believe it was 8 or 9 this weekend. I honestly can't remember what Delta was, but the important part is that he ended up winning it. miya form-wise has just been looking exceptional, and even though Peanut's been looking good, I don't think it's good enough. Next up is Zomba versus Anarchy, and character to character, I would slightly favor Greninja here, actually. I just think the damage output, especially on a big body character like Rob, is super, super high, but player to player, I am going to be going with Zomba to win this one. That's no offense to Anarchy. Zomba's just, like, really, really good at this game. Then you're going to have Cola versus Goblin, and I don't believe that Cola has ever lost the Ditto to Goblin before. It's like 5-0 or 6-0, something like that in his favor, and he's probably not going to lose the Ditto this time around. Now, it is a Ditto. Things can get crazy, but they just usually don't when it comes to Cola and Goblin. Then you're going to have Zomba and Cola. This head-to-head is actually really, really interesting because, as you can see, they've played quite a lot before, and 4 of their last 5 sets have gone into Cola's favor, but their only recent set, the 2024 one, has gone into Zomba's favor, and it does end up going game 5. So I am going to be going with Cola to win this one because of their recent encounters. He's been a lot more successful than Zomba has. Even though Zomba wins their last encounter, I think it's just going to be Cola making a couple small adjustments versus Zomba rewriting his entire game plan. Now, to be fair to Zomba, he already wrote his game plan, presumably, for that win that he got at Patchwork, and maybe that game plan is just going to stay true against Cola for the rest of the time. But what I think is more likely to happen is Cola does make those small adjustments, and he takes that set. Then you're going to have miya versus Cola, and I am going to be going with miya to win this one. I know I had Cola winning in both the Cirque and the Invitational video, but they didn't end up playing at either of those tournaments. And miya just did really, really well that weekend. And it should also be noted, I didn't know this actually when I made those videos, but Cola and miya have played twice before, and miya ended up winning both of their encounters. So I think it is safe to say that miya should be the favorite coming into this set. Next up is going to be Tweak versus Apollo Kage, and this one is honestly super interesting to me because I don't think Tweak does amazing versus Snake, and Diddy Kong definitely doesn't do amazing versus Snake. That is a matchup where the character struggles. He could bring out Sephiroth, of course, just for that massive disjoint, but you're sacrificing a lot of mainly mobility, but as well as damage output, so it's probably going to be staying on the Diddy Kong for Tweak, and I am going to be giving Tweak the slight benefit of the doubt just because form-wise in 2024, Apollo Kage hasn't been the strongest, but I am pretty confident this guy at some point is going to make a resurgence, and if he were to make a resurgence, this would be the perfect tournament to do that because after you end up beating Tweak, then you get Riddles, which honestly is a really tough draw, but I definitely think that he has what it takes to beat Riddles, and then he would presumably get Shattuck. Sorry for the spoilers, and Shattuck, I mean, that's amazing. Snake Corn's a great one for Snake. So if Apollo can get the subset of a Tweak, he's got a really solid bracket, but it is a pretty big if, especially with the way that Tweak has been looking. On the other side, you're going to have Riddles versus Jazzo, and I would expect Riddles to win this one just because FGC versus FGC, I just expect the better player to win. I think Riddles is the better player here, but Jazzo has been killing it recently. You have to give this guy a ton of credit. I think he has been looking very impressive. So this set should be a lot closer than it maybe seems on paper, or for how much credit I'm actually giving it. And then you're going to have Tweak versus Riddles, and I would definitely expect Tweak to win this one. It feels like Diddy Kong just destroys these FGC characters in the neutral, and it is almost certainly going to be Terry out of Riddles in this situation. I think he is going to want to go with that mobility over that sturdiness of Kazuya. I guess I can't assure you that is going to be Terry, but it seems like he's been playing Terry a lot more recently. I think Terry's the better choice in the Diddy Kong, and I think with Terry, he has a very real chance versus Tweak, but overall, I would still slightly favor Tweak. I would like 60-40 versus the Kazuya, and then like 55-45 versus the Terry. Next up is going to be Shattuck versus Zap, and I would definitely expect Shattuck to win that one, but you got to give Zap some credit. He looked really good at Cirque, ended up getting 9th place at that event with a couple super solid wins, but Shattuck has Corn against Bowser Jr., which I imagine is in Corn's favor, and more importantly, Shattuck is just, Shattuck at the end of the day. Then you're going to have Syrup versus Omega, and I think this set should be very competitive. It's almost certainly going to be Steve versus Joker. I don't imagine the Nest comes out for Syrup, and I am slightly going to be favoring Syrup to win this one, but honestly, this is like probably the closest set of any of these round ones, unless there's like a super obvious one that I'm missing that I'm really not sure how it's going to go. I'm honestly really looking forward to this one, but regardless of who wins it, I think Shattuck is going to come out on top. I think he would prefer Syrup just because matchup wise, I think Steve and Ness are definitely better choices than Joker. I think Joker's a little bit of a struggle for Corn, but even if Shattuck ends up getting Omega, I would still expect him to come out on top just because, like I said, for Zap, it is Shattuck at the end of the day. So player-wise, I think Shattuck should be able to get to this top 8 qualifier, with his hardest opponent most likely being Omega, though Syrup isn't an easy one by any means. It's just matchup-wise, Corn is pretty good, Steve. And then for that top 8 qualifier, you're going to have Tweak versus Shattuck, and I would expect Tweak to take this one. Tweak is kind of like the last player that Shattuck hasn't gotten that big win on yet. He's beaten Spargo, he's beaten Sonics, he's beaten the boss. All of his demons have been conquered, Light most importantly, but Tweak is the one that is standing in his way, and he will fall eventually, but I don't think it's going to be at this event. Next up is Sonics versus Loaf, and Sonics is going to be the heavy favorite in that one, not only because he's Sonics, but also matchup-wise, that one is just really tough for Warrior. Glutene's also struggled there in the past, so Loaf should be no exception. Then you're going to have Mudace versus Raflow, and I'm really looking forward to this one because Mudace has not been playing on his A game recently. He's been very vocal about that on Twitter, just not being able to play at 100%, which is really, really unfortunate, honestly. There's no other way to put it, but I think you need to be at 100% in order to beat Raflow. And Mudace is someone who is very good against Palutena because he thinks his character is garbage, and he thinks the character is garbage because he's very aware of her flaws. He knows how to play around her. He even has a Palutena himself. But I just think Raflow is such an overwhelming and fast player that if Mudace isn't at 100%, he isn't going to be able to handle that speed. Even if he knows what to do, his hands might not be able to keep up with it. And it's unfortunate that that's the reason that I'm predicting him losing. But at the end of the day, that's the reason. So then you're going to have Sonics versus Raflow. And I think Raflow should honestly make this set extremely competitive. But I am slightly going to be favoring Sonics here just because of player versus player at the end of the day. I think form-wise, Sonics is a little bit, not a little bit better. I think Sonics is better than Raflow. But Raflow, very good at this game. He is definitely good enough to beat someone of Sonic's caliber, and I also think that Palutena is a good enough character, specifically for Sonic, to come out on top in that matchup. So it should be a banger, but you kind of got to give it to Sonics here. Next up is Lima versus Chase, and I believe Lima has a 4-1 record there, and he's definitely won their last 3 encounters. Plus, he just looked unbelievable that past weekend, getting 2nd place at both Invitational and Cirque. So I am going to be having Lima winning that one. Then you're going to have Meister versus Jackal, and Wolf is always a scary character to run into in bracket, but especially when you're made of paper, because a forward air into back air at 40-50% near the ledge could just be your stock. It could be your next stock. It could be your 3rd stock. Every single stock, you are in danger constantly of literally anything into that Wolf back air. But Meister, he's going to be very aware of this. I think he should be able to win this one just by playing around Jackal's kill conditions. He's very aware that Jackal is an aggressive player. He is going to be taking those swings. He's got that veteran presence. He should be fine. it's just going to be really scary for him when he is playing that set. Then you're going to have Lima versus Meister, and I would expect Lima to win this one just because of how good he looked versus Miya in those past events. Like I mentioned, he ends up beating Miya at Invitational as well as beating him at Cirque CFL, even though he does end up losing the reset here. So I'm feeling pretty confident for Lima going into that Game and Watch matchup. And then finally, you're going to have Sonics versus Lima as our top 8 qualifier. And I would definitely expect Sonics to win this one. I actually think Sonic does really well against Bayonetta because she's not able to play that normal camp style of just outranging her opponents, then coming in with this crazy burst option, because Sonic is just like immediately in your face. She's not able to edge guard Sonic as effectively as well because Sonic can just kind of go high and ignore a lot of that stuff, or he can just, go low. That one is a little bit harder just because he doesn't have a hitbox on the recovery, but you get the point that I'm trying to make here. Sonic is just such a mobile character that he's actually able to out-mobility Bayonetta, which is not something that she's a fan of. Next up is Light versus MVD, and you would definitely expect Light to win this one. Number one, he's just really good against Snake. He's beaten her in their only encounter. He's got a winning record on MVD, more importantly, and I also think Fox is pretty good against Snake. I'm not super sure who necessarily wins that matchup, but when Light plays it, Fox wins it because he is so smothering. He gets really good value out of the projectile, or rather the reflector, whenever he needs to, but it's honestly very rare that he needs to because he's just always on top of Snake, not allowing Snake to actually throw those projectiles, play the game that he wants to. Just such a smothering character that is very, very difficult for the military man to deal with, so Light should win that one. Then you're going to have Beast Mode Paul versus Luis. Now, this one's really interesting. They played 5 times before, but 4 of them were online, and all of their online sets Beast Mode Paul wins, but Luis wins their only offline set, and I also think that he's going to win this set because if Beast Mode Paul starts off with Hero, it's probably going to be Hero starting off for Beast Mode Paul. You have the option for Luis to counterpick with Rob, and Luis's Rob is really, really good. Good enough to the point where I think it should be able to beat Beast Mode Paul's Hero. So then it should be the Sephiroth out of Beast Mode Paul, but then you just go back to the Palutena for Luis. So I think it's going to be like a bit of a character picking war between these two guys, and I just slightly favor Luis in the character picking war. I favor his Palutena versus Beast Mode Paul's Hero more so than I favor Beast Mode Paul's Sephiroth versus Luis's Rob. So if both guys are on the back foot, I favor Luis more so on the back foot than I favor Beast Mode Paul on the back foot, and that's ultimately going to be the deciding factor for me putting Luis over Beast Mode Paul. Then we get Light versus Luis, and I do think that Light is going to win that one. He's also very good versus Palutena, got a ton of experience versus Nairo in the past, so he just knows the ins and outs of that matchup extremely well. And while Luis is also very good against Fox, historically Light almost always comes out on top. I should also mention that if Luis doesn't end up upsetting Beast Mode Paul, he's got a really good chance versus Light, like a straight up 50-50 chance versus Light. He can absolutely take that set, so definitely keep your eyes out on that one. But you're going to have MK Leo Gagai as our next set regardless, and I would heavily favor Leo to win this one. I think the last time he played against a really good Luigi player was Luigi, and he ended up reverse 3-0ing that set. He's just got so many characters to play. Joker, Aegis, Byleth, Meta Knight are all fine choices into Luigi, so Gagai is definitely going to be fighting an uphill battle here, and I think it's one that he is going to lose. Then you're going to have Mars versus Zatanna, and I would slightly favor ZSS versus Ness. You're just able to out-mobility the character. You outrange Ness, which is honestly kind of funny considering that Ness has the distance, but the Zera, the back air, the forward tilt from ZSS, they're just used to poke Ness out. He's not able to get in, and that mobility especially is going to be the main boon for ZSS in that matchup. But to Atada's credit, I think he is the best Ness player in America right now. He's been looking really solid, so can't count him out completely, but I am going to be counting him out. Then you're going to have Mars versus MK Leo, and we finally get this set in 2024, modern day Giants clashing. Who's going to win? I have no idea. I'm going to be giving this one to MK Leo because I do think that Joker slightly beats out against ZSS, but it's kind of tough to say because the last time those characters played at the super top level, it was before they were both nerfed, so I don't really know. I'm just going to be giving this one to Leo because I think Joker slightly beats out ZSS, and also form-wise, I think Leo has been slightly better than Mars. Then we have Light versus Leo, and I'm going to stop being boring and actually predict an upset here. I am going to be going with MK Leo to take this one over Light. You have Light winning their last 2 encounters, but they haven't played since the Luminosity Invitational, which was a couple months ago at this point, and you didn't have Leo going Roy, or rather Joker in that set. He ended up going Roy and Byleth. So I think if he pulls out the Joker, he's playing like we've been seeing him play these past couple months, he is going to be able to make that upset and get top 8 through the winner's side. And y'all know the drill at this point. We don't do the loser side of the bracket just because the majority of these matchups are not going to happen. So I've taken the players that are most likely to top 8, and we have given them their percentages. You're going to have the confidence here with Miya, Tweak, Sonics, and Leo. Fairly self-explanatory. Those are the guys that picked the top 8. They're the winner's side. Then you have someone confident with Lima, Light, Cola, and Shattuck. And those are the guys that picked the top 8, the loser's side of the bracket. Specifically, you got Lima top 8 just through the normal part of the bracket. Right here is most likely opponents are Syrup and Riddles. And I think Bayo does really, really good versus FGC characters, and she also does pretty good versus Steve. So I think Lima should be winning those sets. Then you're going to have have Light qualifying through this part of the bracket right here because I do have him losing to Leo. And you also got to remember that I had Cola beating Zomba. So this is either going to be Zomba or Cola, and it could also be Wrath or Raflow Jackal as well, though I think Wrath, Raflow, Cola, Zomba are like by far the most likely outcomes to happen, and I would heavily favor Light versus both Wrath and Raflow, and I would just favor Light versus Cola and Zomba, like a 55-45 maybe in both of those matchups. So because I slightly favor Light or heavily favor Light versus everyone, he's top 8ing, pretty obvious there. Then you're going to have Cola top 8ing through this part of the bracket. As I literally just said, I have Cola upsetting Zomba, so they are going to be switching places in the bracket. But I honestly think whoever it is between Zomba or Cola, they are going to be the one that makes it into top 8. I think Mars has like 55-45 against both of them, with him being the 45. I think Beast Mode Paul honestly has a really good chance versus Cola to take that upset, but versus Zomba, I would heavily favor him just because it is Rob versus Hero. So Zomba and Cola are the most likely to make it through this part of the bracket right here, and I just think that Cola is going to beat Zomba, so I have him popping out in this part of the bracket here. Pretty self-explanatory. And then for our final one, you are going to have Shattuck, and he's just going to get top 8 through this normal part of the bracket over either Meister or Udes. I would favor him there. So pretty self-explanatory, maybe a little bit boring, but hey, what can I say? The Siegers did a good job this time around. And then everyone else is Zomba, Mudes, Mars, Riddles, Meister, Beast Mode Paul, Wrath, Peanut, Raflow, Luis, Jazo, and Omega. As always, I would be surprised if anyone not in this top 20 ended up making it into the top 8, but especially at an event like this, because this one does seem particularly top heavy, with the top heavy ones just being like literally all of the top 10 players in the world. Like of this top 8, pretty much every single one of them is either going to be in the top 10 or make a crazy upset. So it's going to be a top 8 to look forward to for sure. And we have finally arrived at the top 8. This lovely graphic, as always, was made by Memorization. Their link will be down below, so be sure to check them out and sub while you're down there. But our first matchup in the winner's side is going to be Tweak versus Mia. And I'm really looking forward to this one because they ended up playing twice at the Cirque weekend, with Tweak winning the first set of the Invitational and Mia winning the second set in the main bracket of Cirque. And he did it in a reverse 3-0, by the way, and it's the fashion of that reverse 3-0 that is ultimately going to be giving this one to Mia for me, because you could see him figuring it out in real time. It was actually crazy to see. It was like two pieces of a puzzle clicked in his brain and he just stopped losing. And also prior to that weekend, Tweak had, or rather Mia had, a 2-0 record on Tweak. So historically, this is a very good encounter for Mia. He wins their last encounter as well. So I do think that Mia should be the favorite here, but this set should be very, very competitive. Really excited to see how it unfolds. Then you're going to have Sonics versus MKLeo. They haven't played since I believe it was Gomel, where it was a very close set. You do have Sonics taking that one, but it ends up going game 5 Joker versus Sonic. And I think this time around, Leo is actually going to come out on top. I don't know if it's something in the air or the water, or maybe it's just the time of year, but I am feeling a Leo W at this event, at least to get him to the winners finals. I want to add a little bit more detail to this MK Leo Sonic set. I'm pretty confident that he is going to be playing Joker. He could try out Aegis, though I don't think he will, just because Sonics is so good at that matchup. Meta Knight is also on the table. I don't think that's a terrible choice going into Sonics, but I do think that Joker is not only Leo's best character into Sonic, but also Leo's just best character, so he should be going Joker. You do have Gun as a really good disruptive option, but the main way that Leo is going to be making his money is going to be off of his Arsene interactions, just his normal interactions. Obviously, you got to get a ton of value, but especially off of your Arsene interactions, because those are also going to be your main kill interaction. So it's really just going to be that fine line of Leo just playing that game plan alongside Sonics, tit for tat, using the gun to make sure that you're not giving him too big of an advantage in the neutral. But when Sonics try to force an engagement against you, you need to make sure that you're able to 180 it and get a massive punish, because he's not going to give you too many opportunities. Onto the loser side of the bracket, starting off with Cola versus Shattuck. And character versus character, I do think that Cola wins that matchup. It's honestly a bit of a weird one because Roy doesn't really play it like a sword character. He plays it like a rushdown character. He's always kind of a rushdown character, just with a sword, but especially versus Corn. You have way better mobility, so you're able to get in versus her. But when it comes to like just neutral hits, swinging your sword, Corn is favored there every single time because her sword is just way bigger than Roy's, and it also doesn't have a sour spot attached to the end of it. So in neutral interactions, when you're swinging at each other in the advantage state, disadvantage state, pretty much in every aspect of the game except that like being really overwhelming and killing, Corn is going to be winning in that matchup. And also player versus player is just a really good record for Shattuck. It's the exact same thing as the Cola Zomba record we talked about earlier, where Shattuck has won 4 of their last 5 encounters, but the most recent encounter has been won by Cola, and funnily enough, it was also at Patchwork. But unlike that Zomba Cola record, you have had them play multiple times in 2024, with Shattuck winning sets at both Invitational 2 and Collision. So I do think that Shattuck is going to be winning that one. But Cola won their last encounter, and you definitely shouldn't count him out. Then you're going to have Light versus Lima. And these guys played twice recently, with Light winning their most recent set, or rather Light winning that first set at Invitational 3, and then Lima winning their most recent set at Cirque in the main bracket. But I am still going to be giving this one to Light because I do think that Fox beats Bayonetta. I think you're able to get a lot more value out of Laser in that matchup than you are in most matchups, and you are just such a quick character that you're able to match that Bayonetta burst range like I was talking about earlier with Sonic. Characters that are actually able to keep up with the tempo of Bayonetta, whether she's running away from you or at you, are just going to be doing really, really well in that matchup, or a lot better than most characters do in that matchup, and I think Light's going to be able to take this one home. Next up is going to be Sonics versus Shattuck, and I do think that Sonics is going to take this one. He's won their last 3 encounters, and I honestly think it's a little bit unlucky for Shattuck to be playing Corrin in this situation, and you got to hear me out on this one, because there's like 5 characters in this game that do good against Sonic. That can even be perceived to beat Sonic, but most of them are just even against Sonic. You know, Aegis, Fox, Pikachu, Corrin is going to be one of them. And because of that, Sonic as a player is going to be so much more prepared for those characters than any other character in this game, because they actually have ways that can disrupt Sonic. They have stuff that stops his game plan. So he needs to have adaptations ready. And especially for Sonic, having Spargo as his practice partner, the second or third best Corrin player in the world, it's just so unfortunate for Shattuck. Not only is his character the one that Sonic is preparing for the most potentially of any character in the game, but at least in like the top 5 for characters to be prepared for, but that's also going to be his practice partner. So definitely unlucky for Shattuck. Can he beat Sonic? Yes, absolutely. He's done it before. He beat him twice, in fact, at the Luminosity Invitational, but that record overall is 7-2. He hasn't been able to do it outside of that event, and I don't think it's going to happen this time around. Then you're going to have Tweak versus Light, and Light has also beaten Tweak in their last 3 encounters. But because of that, I'm actually going to be going with Tweak to win this one, because Light and Tweak, they never beat each other for so long. 3 is like the longest streak I've seen them beat each other in a row in quite some time. So in order for Light to actually get the win here, he's going to have to make history. So we've got our top 4, Leo versus Miya in the winner's side, and Sonics versus Tweak in the loser's side, starting off with Miya versus Leo, who have still not played in Smash Ultimate. And until these guys play, I think Leo's going to win this one, and I think he's going to win it every single time, because he is the best, not the best, but one of the best players in the world versus Mr. Game Watch. He's got such an amazing record versus Meister. His character is also just really good in that matchup. Now, you could have Miya going into the Steve. That's definitely a possibility, but Leo also is pretty good versus Steve, in my opinion. We saw him play against Akola when he ended up going to Japan for the Umabora trip, and while he does end up losing to Akola, he managed to take his Steve to Game 5 with the Byleth. So this could be a bit of a counter-picking war, though I don't imagine so. I'm pretty confident it's just going to be Game & Watch versus Joker the entire time, but we could see some counter-picking, a little bit of Byleth, a little bit of Steve here and there. But until I see MKLeo lose to a Game Watch player, I'm convinced it just cannot happen, except for that one time at Colossal, but we don't talk about that. That obviously did not count. In the loser semifinals, you're going to have Sonics versus Tweak, and Sonics normally beats Tweak. The only time that you have Tweak beating Sonics in recent memory is to win a tournament. He beats him at Gommel, he beats it at LMBM. Every other encounter that these guys have, Sonics is coming out on top, and because this isn't to win a tournament, Sonic should also come out on top this time around as well. In the losers finals, you're going to have Miya versus Sonics, and this is definitely a tough one for Miya. Sonics has a 4-1 record against him. He's been winning all of their recent encounters. I also think that Sonic slightly beats Game & Watch if I had to give it to either character's favor. So it seems like everything is on Sonic's favor here, and I do think everything is on Sonic's favor here. I would expect him to win this one, but you had Miya beating Spargo finally for the first time the last time he came to NA, so it's very clear that he's been putting in thought and effort into how he wants to play the next time he fights off against these NA champions, and Sonic is going to be no exception to that. Miya is going to be the most prepared for the set that he's been prepared for maybe anyone in the world, but I've got to see it to believe it, especially when it's against someone like Sonics, and that gives us the grand finals of MKLeo versus Sonic. And who would I be if I had MKLeo getting it all the way to the grand finals and not winning the event? And hey, even though the second place curse was broken, that doesn't mean that we can't start it up again. And with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The sport has been absolutely unreal as of late. If there's anything I left out, got wrong, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below. Be sure to sub while you're down there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.